One of the most impressive film artists of all time was Theodoros Angelopoulos. Perhaps this is considered the sire of Greek cinema. Certainly, 1975's The Travelling Players is a regular candidate, seems to be regularly considered the greatest Greek film of all time. And it may very well be, although the competition, to my mind, is, well, obviously, Eurydice BA 2037. We all know my adoration for that film. But the other competition would be, naturally, another one of Angelopoulos' films, namely 1980's Alexander the Great. Angelopoulos is what we might consider a manifestation of that slow cinema bracket. His films consist of very, very long takes with extremely precise and phenomenally meticulous choreography. You may be able to get a bit of an understanding of this from my screenshots, but I haven't gone out of my way to illustrate this. Mainly because I probably wouldn't be able to do it justice. I would just recommend viewing the films, or at least view scenes from Angelopoulos' films on YouTube. That will give you an idea of what we're dealing with here, which is an incomparable genius of the cinematic arts. Rather than having to suffer through my takeaway, my interpretation of the film, let's let's hear what Angelopoulos has had to say about this film. This is sourced from Sight and Sound, a 1980 issue. I'll just begin briefly though, because this will be key in understanding what we're talking about. The author of this, the supplier of this piece, Tony Mitchell. This piece is from 81, not 80. Excuse me. He supplied what I believe it's him. He supplied a plot synopsis, which I will read out here. This is a brief summary of this film's narrative. On the first New Year's Eve of the 20th century, the Greek bandit Alexander seizes a party of English aristocrats and holds them hostage in a remote mountain village. The village is run as a commune under the guidance of a group of Italian anarchists. Alexander is a mysterious figure. His birth is unknown, and so he adopts a village woman as his mother, and her daughter becomes his sister. Later, he marries his adopted mother, so that his stepsister becomes his stepdaughter. On the wedding day, assassins hired by the ousted landowners try to kill Alexander, but murder his bride instead. Gradually, Alexander comes to represent more than just a bandit. And here's what Angelopoulos has had to say. The first thing to be said is that it's the most simple film I've made so far. Its progress is linear, and it hasn't developed its stylistic form in the course of editing like the other films. There are no chronological jumps. The film begins on New Year's Eve in 1900 and proceeds from there, except for the final sequence when the little Alexander becomes Megalexandros and goes towards the city, which is a modern city, present-day Athens, in fact, in contrast to the rural turn-of-the-century world of the rest of the film. When the little Alexander enters the city, he brings all the experience of the century with him. He has gained a total experience of life, sex, and death, and over it there is a great question mark. How long will the night last, and when will a new day break? It's a more surrealistic film than The Travelling Players. It doesn't describe real events, but their sense and meaning and concentrates on political and sexual consequences. It's a more poetic film, whereas Travelling Players was more concrete. Greek people have grown up caressing dead stones. I've tried to bring mythology down from the heights and directly to the people, in both Travelling Players and O Megalexandros. The title should not be Alexander the Great, but Megalexandros, who exists in popular anonymous legends and fables, and has nothing to do with the historical Alexander. He evokes a totally different personage. For this reason, we have had difficulty in finding a translation for the title. The legend of Megalexandros originated in 1453 under Turkish domination, and it has come down through oral tradition over the centuries. It embodies one of the deepest of Greek sentiments, that of waiting for a liberator, even a messiah. He's a kind of Christ figure, and in the film is also identified with Saint George. The film is based on two sources. One is the Book of Megalexandros, which is an account of the legend, and provides the general climate of the film rather than the storyline. The second, more concrete source is an actual event of 1870, when a group of aristocratic English tourists were kidnapped by Greek bandits at Marathon. The bandits held them to ransom and demanded an amnesty from the government in exchange for the hostages. The government botched the whole business, and the exchange never came about, so the tourists were killed and a scandal erupted. The British fleet blockaded the port. So yes, extremely insightful comments from Angelopoulos there. This is one of the very best films I've discussed so far in FOTD. A spellbinding cinematic experience, Alexander the Great is one of the finest works from the absolutely visionary Theodoros Angelopoulos.